Bangladesh's interim government has confirmed on Thursday that UN will conduct a probe in Bangladesh on the atrocities committed during the unrest. It's been learned that the United Nations will dispatch a fact-finding team next week to investigate crimes committed during the student revolution in July and earlier this month. Remember, the United Nations move comes after allegations of UN duplicity, especially when it's been extremely vocal over atrocities in Gaza and Ukraine, but remained mum over atrocities on minorities in Bangladesh. The interim government has also added that the mission will focus on probing widespread human rights abuses in Bangladesh. The move has been discussed between UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk and interim Bangladeshi leader Dr. Muhammad Yunus during a phone call late on Wednesday. The top body of Hindus in Bangladesh has said that the community has faced at least 278 attacks since the ouster of former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. Also, over 230 people died in Bangladesh in the incidents of violence that erupted across the country following the fall of the Hasina government on 5th of August. That took the death toll to 560 during 3 weeks of violence, which originated from a students' movement against a controversial quota system in jobs. Also, Bangladesh's International Crimes Tribunal has said that it launched an investigation against former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and 9 others for alleged genocide and crimes against humanity committed between 15th of July and 5th of August during the student-led mass movement against her government. A complaint was filed on Wednesday with the investigation agency of Bangladesh's International Crime Tribunal against the deposed Prime Minister and several others, accusing them of committing genocide and crimes against humanity during the mass movement of the students against their government. The complaint came on a day when the interim government said that the murders conducted within the period from 1st of July up until 5th of August would be tried by the International Crimes Tribunal. Now, Hasina's government was accused of many such abuses during her 15 years in power, including the mass detention and extrajudicial killing of political opponents. She fled to India, where she still remains. 10 days ago, student-led protests flooded Dhaka's streets in a dramatic end to her iron-fisted rule. After Sheikh Hasina's resignation, a caretaker government led by Nobel laureate Muhammad Yunus was formed with a commitment to implement administrative and political reforms and ensure accountability for those involved in the violence. As far as the United Nations is concerned, listen in to what the UN spokesperson Farhan Haq had to say in an exclusive interview to CNN News 18. Mr. Farhan Haq, thank you for joining in on CNN News 18. Now, the UN Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has opposed the racially motivated attacks in Bangladesh. Could you elaborate on the Secretary General's statement?
Well, of course, in all countries, we stand against any attacks against communities based on their race, their religion, or any other discriminatory means. For our part, we want to make sure that there are no racially based attacks and also no incitement to racism. So that is something that we've pursued everywhere the UN operates, and that is the case here. In this case, what we've made clear is that we want a peaceful atmosphere to be restored to Bangladesh as soon as possible. Our Human Rights Office has made clear that those who are responsible for human rights violations must be held accountable. And our Human Rights Office has also offered to help with any investigations or to support any investigations under the current circumstances.
It's interesting that you talked about supporting any kind of investigation, because there have been calls for the UN to be part of an investigation into the recent killings in Bangladesh. Will the UN consider the request only if the interim government approaches, or are you already part of an investigation?
Well, the way the UN operates is we do operate in cooperation with governments. And so if we were to receive any formal request from the government, we would comply with that. But we have made clear, including through the High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, that we stand ready to support any of these efforts.
Mr. Haq, protesters have rallied outside the UN headquarters over violence against Hindus and other minorities in Bangladesh. Many have questioned UN's delayed response to the racial attacks in Bangladesh. How does UN respond to that?
I think we have been very clear from the outset in calling for a halt to the violence, and we'll continue to do so. Obviously, we want to make sure that what happens now is a peaceful and democratic transition, and we would support that as it goes forward.
Is there any initiative planned by the UN to rehabilitate all those minorities who've been impacted by the riots?
We certainly stand ready to support anyone who has been affected by the violence. Again, this would be in cooperation with any request that we receive, since we deal with governments on the ground when we go about our work. But we've made clear our willingness to support the people and the government of Bangladesh as we go forward.
Mr. Haq, my last question. What are the UN's hopes from the new interim government with Professor Yunus at the helm?
Well, our hope is that as the process of government formation continues, it will be an inclusive one. We want to see that all of the communities and all of the political groups in Bangladesh feel that this is a government that belongs to them.
Well, may peace eventually prevail in Bangladesh. Many thanks to you, Mr. Farhan Haq, for giving us your precious time here at CNN News 18.